announced the appointment of the Acting Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti, who took office as his predecessors, Ndegwa Muhoro, handed over files and the keys to the country's security nerve center in investigating operations. Kinoti, an Assistant Inspector General of Police, was appointed on Friday by President Uhuru Kenyatta in a security shakeup that saw several names dropped in the new government lineup. The former National Police Service spokesman now has a full in-tray. And as NTV's Dennis Okari reports, the first challenge will be restoring confidence of Kenyans who have questioned the ability of DCI to solve cases.
Those who know him in security circles describe him as polite, humble, and soft-spoken. To criminals, especially in Kisumu, Hispania, Busia, and Migori, they know him as a fearless, no-nonsense crime buster before he was redeployed to Nairobi. George Kinoti previously served as the National Police Service spokesman since 2014, but his experience as the personal assistant to former Director of Criminal Investigations James Kamau perhaps put him in the right position to succeed Ndegwa Muhoro, whose tenure has been riddled with accusations that tainted the backbone and foundation of policing in the country. Kinoti had previously served as head of security at the Central Bank of Kenya, head of police complaints at police headquarters, and several divisions as the DCIO. Speaking to NTV this evening, George Kinoti, who now becomes the 15th director at DCI headquarters, said his first order of business this week is to do an audit of the DCI's effectiveness in investigating crime. Kinoti's diary this week is packed with meetings with departmental heads who will make presentations before he goes to the crime statistics to evaluate and interrogate their reports. This section has been plagued with so many issues as the number of reported criminal cases outweigh the number of solved cases due to corruption allegations and a myriad of other reasons, lowering the standards of crime management in the country for several years now. Kinoti says his tough assignment is to make sure the systems that had completely broken down are back up and running before Kenyans can feel the change. Kinoti further told NTV, and I quote, "I will not retain any person who has no value in this institution. Everybody will take their responsibility from the OCS to the DCIO." His bottom-up approach to breathe fresh air to this specialized unit is targeted at the local police stations where most Kenyans interact with law enforcers who look at the DCI to solve complicated cases before they go to court. Dennis Okari, NTV.
And of course, that story by Dennis Okari acts as a segue to our discussion and a raft of issues that we'll be discussing here this morning. We begin with that. Will that particular appointment bring any discernible difference in the police force as well? And of course, we had also on Monday, Munene, who is a cartoonist in the Daily Nation, depicting this cartoon that is behind me. And what is the in-tray of Kinoti as well, if you may just speak it so that our panelists can see and also our viewers can see this morning from the smart screen. There we go. And we can see it's all about so much trash that is in there. It's your in-tray, sir, as it's being ushered into, of course, the office. We have rape, terror, impunity, tribalism, killings, corruption, criminal gangs, dirty politics, hate speech, and a raft of other issues. So I want to introduce our panelists this morning to you as well to just discuss this a bit and a raft of other issues that we'll be discussing this morning as well. Allow me to introduce to you Virunga Simiu, who is a security analyst. Also, we do have Peter Biara-Ajak. Peter Biara-Ajak is Director of International Growth Center from South Sudan. Do I call you Dr. Peter?
Indeed.
Biara-Ajak, at last.
Finally.
Finally. All right. Also, we do have with us Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is a conflict and resolution expert. We do have with us also Erastus Omoncha, who is a former deputy chair of African Union. Also, we do have with us this morning Professor Naomi Damba, who is a vice chancellor of KCA University, expert on defense and foreign policy. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. And as I say, happy felicitation for the new year. I've not seen you this year.
Yes.
I spoke to all of you in the course of the week as well. Thank you very much for joining us today. But let's begin with Virunga on this, because this is really right up your alley. as far as security is concerned. Kinoti being now appointed as the acting director of DCI, he was a spokesman, and looking also at the performance of Ndegwa Muhoro as far as prosecutions were concerned. A lot of cases, as we know, they always say the stone will leave it unturned, but many of the stones we've seen, they've not been unturned as yet as far as prosecution is concerned. Do you think the appointment of Kinoti will make any discernible difference?
You know, okay, it's two ways. One, Kinoti is a career criminal investigations officer.
Yes.
So that is one. He understands the department very well. He's a trained investigator. He's risen through the ranks to where he is. So that is the difference between him and Ndegwa Muhoro. Muhoro and Ndegwa, I don't know which one is first. He was a policeman, but not a crime buster. So the difference is Ndegwa went to directorate for purposes of managing the directorate, but he didn't have the nitty-gritties of what investigations were all about. So that marks a difference. This one understands what his officers are supposed to do. The other one, apart from being a police officer, had to learn some of the ropes on how crime is managed and investigated. But in totality, we also need to look at it that these officers do not operate on their own. They work within a political framework.
Yes.
That must allow officers at that level to operate and deliver. So for as long as the political framework does not give them the independence they look for to deliver, we cannot say that Geoffrey Kinoti will deliver until we see him working. The problem with this country is you appoint very good officers to do their job, but there's a lot of political interference, executive interference, bureaucratic interference, so that the officer at the end of the day has to toe the line for those who appointed him or those who call the shots politically. So that, to me, has been the biggest problem in this country. In terms of competence and qualification, Kinoti qualifies to be where he is. But whether he's going to deliver, I think that we leave it to how he's going to juggle himself within the political framework in this country, which we know does not always give space for officers at that level to deliver, even when they are good at what they do.
We barely heard from him when he was the spokesperson of
Yes.
administration police, right? So it's actually confusing to the public because many people have the face of Charles Owino
Yes.
as a spokesperson, but of course a spokesperson of the national police.
Yeah.
But there is a difference. Maybe you can explain to us where Kinoti is coming from and where Charles Owino also is.
You see, Charles Owino is also a crime buster by training. Okay, we need to understand this. There's a National Police Service, but within the service we have specialized units.
Yes.
So we have the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, we have the General Service Unit, and we have the Administration Police. So within the framework of the National Kenya Police Service, you know, there's the National Police Service and the Kenya Police Service. Then we have the Administration Police Service. So within the framework of the Kenya Police Service, we have people who are initially trained to be members of the Criminal Investigations Department. Now, Owino has been a police spokesperson for years, but his background is also crime investigation. Kinoti's background is also, after joining the police, he took the line of investigations, and therefore he's been trained, he has grown as a police officer within the line of investigations. So he brings to the department or directorate a wide experience in terms of understanding how that department or directorate is supposed to function. So when he was the police, National Police Service spokesperson, he was basically under the Inspector General. But then we have the National Police Service, Kenya Police Service, which was now under Kitili, who has been moved, and that's where Owino fell. So he was speaking for Kenya Police Service. Kinoti was speaking for the overall National Police Service. And National Police Service is a composition of Administration Police and Kenya Police, plus the Directorate of Inspectorate. So at the apex, the Inspector General is in charge of the three services or units, and that's where Kinoti was. But Owino was basically speaking for Kenya Police Service. The Administration Police had his own spokesperson. What we didn't see with the DCI is we never used to hear anybody speak for them. So therefore, Kinoti, every time he used to speak on matters of policing in this country, he was representing the Inspector General, while Owino represents the Deputy Inspector General in charge of Kenya Police Service. So that is the difference.
All right, so we can see this is working seamlessly from where we have the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, Directorate of Prosecution, Kiraka
Yes.
Tobiko, that now has been moved maybe to another docket that we don't know. He'll be a cabinet secretary so far.
Yeah.
But we can see they work seamlessly. From your own estimation, do you think he was really up to scratch as far as that docket is concerned?
You know, Tobiko had an independent office. And like I say, you can put there an angel, but if the political context does not allow you to perform, and if you don't have the guts to go out of your way to perform, it becomes a problem. But don't forget, there's one department that was supposed to be established within the framework of police reforms, and that is the Coroner's Directorate. Actually, I think the bill was passed.
After passing the bill, yeah,
yes.
it was passed, I remember.
So you are supposed to have a coroner's department that is supposed to deal with homicide cases. Since we started our police investigations, that department has never been formed. Why? Because that is the department that was supposed to take over homicide cases from the Directorate of Inspectorate, Criminal Investigation. And it was supposed to be an independent directorate that was supposed to work very closely with the Director, Office of the DPP. For some reasons, that department has never been established. So the thinking was that if you have a national police service, you have a Kenya Police Service, the Administration Police Service, IPOA, then you include the Coroner's Service. So the sector will be complete. And therefore, all this will be working very closely with the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. But for some reasons, they didn't seem to be gelling, because while Tobiko will make his own decisions, he'll be frustrated from time to time from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. So as much as he tried to do his work, notwithstanding the political context in which he was working in, I think he got a lot of frustration from the Department of Criminal Investigations, and that can only come from the top. And therefore, if the director is not supporting the what is it called? Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, it becomes very difficult for him to take cases to court, because you see the criminal justice system is a chain.
Yes.
You start with the police, which includes investigations, you go to the DPP, which includes prosecutions, then you go to the judiciary. So if this chain is cut somewhere in between, it does not allow the judges to make good decisions, because one, the arresting officers did not do their jobs well. Two, the investigators did not do their jobs well. Three, the prosecutors do not have good evidence from investigations that should allow them to prosecute this case in the judiciary system for people to be convicted. So if this chain is not seamless and it's not working together, you end up getting so many cases being thrown out by the judiciary because of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations.
So we know also they were really slow off the mark to come up with the coroner's bill and enact it. Now it's an act, and that took almost 6 years.
Yes.
Right now it's an act, but we can see also they're slow off the mark to try
even to appoint.
To appoint. Yes. Do you think also this will make any difference? Because this, of course, will affect the what we normally call him, who is I can't. It's eluding my mind right now. But do you think if we really appoint the coroner right now, in the cases where the high-profile political cases where they have murders, this will come to fruition when investigation is being done? Because we've seen, yes, many of these also offices, they've been a lapdog of the executive.
I'll give you an example. IPOA. IPOA is part of this system of policing. We have a very strong character in the form of the chairperson. So even within the context in which they operate, if you have a person who is steadfast and believes in what he or she does, there's a likelihood that there'll be a change in how homicide cases are handled in this country. So if you appoint the right person, notwithstanding what we see in this country, it will have some impact, not complete 100%, but at least now we can have homicide cases that are being investigated by independent bodies, an independent organization outside the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. So as much as we might not say there'll be 100%, but it will have some impact the way IPOA has had some impact on policing, although not 100%. So it's good to start with what we can have, but it's very important that we have that department established so that all these cases that have never been completed should be done by this department to assist the police do their work.
Right, so what I was looking for is a government pathologist.
Yes.
And we wonder if truly this is still the arm of the government, how independent it will be. That will be the question. That will be actually the question and the big elephant in the room, because yes, still we'll see the influence could be maybe of executive also trying to tamper with some of the investigations that the coroner will be actually undertaking.
I've just given you an example of IPOA.
I know.
IPOA
So
has been frustrated for as long as we know. But somehow IPOA has been delivering a few cases. So if you get the right person, notwithstanding the interference, the frustrations, you'll still see some progress in terms of homicide investigations in this country. If you get the right person, an independent person who is willing to deliver to the Kenyan people, notwithstanding the frustrations. We know IPOA has not delivered 100%, but at least you can see they have really tried. And somehow they put some checks on vagaries of the police service, although not to the extent to which Kenyans expected IPOA to deliver.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And of course, this is really right up your alley. That's why I gave you much of a time. But if the rest of you maybe want to weigh in on this particular developments we've seen so far, maybe you can as well. You can listen from also Mr. Omwencha, right? These particular reforms that you're seeing, what would you weigh in?
Well, I think I'm looking at it from one important point of view, that President Uhuru Kenyatta is now looking at his second term, which is also of legacy. And if you look at the very first area that he has tackled is on police reform. And that, of course, informs many things, because if there is anything that, as Werunga has mentioned, that, we saw some gaps, is the expectations of this constitution and that of the performance, particularly from the DCI, the DPP, and of course what has been talked about, the police brutality and impunity and so forth. So let's hope, again with the caveats that have been expressed here, we see a much refarmed system that can be the legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right, Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Dibal, I think these are, with the appointment of Kinoti as the new DCI, based on what we've heard about Kinoti, his interactions with many other professionals. I have interacted with him before. He's a fine professional policeman, and he has all it will take to really bring back the DCI, the Director of Criminal Investigations, to where it's supposed to be, and ensure that cases that eventually land on the magistrates, judges' court would have all the details that they need to be successfully prosecuted. Now, the first thing that Kinoti will need to do is to really look at the reports that are there, including the most recent report that ranked Kenya third from the bottom as the worst police, one of the worst police forces in the world. And one of the reasons that that report indicated is actually that most cases are not investigated well. Kinoti will be working under very difficult circumstances if the country will still continue or rather there will still be political interference and corruption in certain quarters or sectors in this country, and police is one of those areas that Kinoti will really need to look at and get the best professional, ethical, clean policemen under him that will assist him to make sure that he delivers. He can deliver. He is a professional guy, And if he is going to work very hard and ensure that, and somehow he has to guard against political interference and corruption. Those are the two major elements, as Simiyu is talking about, that might ensure that his work is not going to yield fruits. And if he's going to really tackle that and get clean officers under him, I think he's going to deliver.
Right.
And that's one area really that if Kenya is going to move forward in crime busting, which seems to be on the upswing, he really has to deal with us.
Right. Peter Birajaka from South Sudan. I don't know how things are shaking into place when it comes to police, and now it's still a young nation, and how you're trying to shake things into place. But yes, just given your country and looking at ours as well, how are we faring, and how do you also learn a lot from our police force?
It's quite fascinating, Dibal, and I think Warunga put it quite well before when you said you can have the most finest officer that you can put in any position, but if the context does not allow that officer to perform, then usually there will be disappointment. And this has been the case of South Sudan. We have had some very good police officers. Some of them were former military officers, some quite competent, but the political structure itself does not give them the chance to perform. And it will come down to what President Kenyatta really prioritizes and what kind of legacy does he want to keep. And if he's serious about his legacy, as it seemed to be the case since the end of the election, then I think he's going to allow these officers the space to perform and to do their job and try to look at a kind of a system that can work efficiently. He gets only 5 more years and that's it. And he's a young man. And he will be around for maybe another 20 years afterwards. So, and depending how he leaves Kenya, that will mark whether he's well received, he's respected, and all of these things. So I think that matters to him. But at the same time, we have to also look at the reality. It's not going to be an easy job. It's never an easy job to look at the entire Department of Investigation and overhaul it. It's not an easy job. And even in an environment that is extremely supportive, that by itself is a momentous task. So I want to wish the officers that are appointed good luck. They have their job cut out for them. And we are watching. We are still in a state of turmoil. Debar, our former Chief of Defense Forces, is now being rumored to have rebelled. We don't really know what is the situation. But things are not very encouraging in South Sudan. So let's hope that you guys are moving forward.
Of course, we shall be looking at what is happening. Yeah, we had the ceasefire, but since last week also there were flare-ups, I think on Thursday last week. And yes, so this is also threatening the ceasefire as well. Let's hear from Professor Nwamidamba.
Captain Warunga put it precisely and very nicely, how system tie up with each other to make a difference. But here's my point. My point is that it seems to me that our country has been invaded by what I will call alien or extraterrestrial, which is eating at the very fabric of our society in the name of corruption. And the corruption feed into everything, which create everything. Turmoil, stop the judiciary from working, stop police from doing their job.
Extraterrestrial forces.
It seems to me, because
we are talking about the otherworldly forces here.
Because it seems to me it's an unstoppable, and it's in everything, transportation system, school system, what else it is not in. And so the point is you can appoint the best people you can.
Yes.
But unless we have the political will and commitment for these people to do their job, we can't make a difference. And I don't want to be pessimistic about this, but every Kenyan listening this morning need to know that it's going to take every single one of us to say that enough is enough. We have to reverse the trend. We have to put the country on development trajectory, on meaningful investigation, on prosecuting of these people. It's like the ball you go to the barber to cut your hair. because you still have quite a bit. And, you know, once you cut your hair, you have to continue trimming it.
Yes.
And so we have to sustain the will to stop corruption. And if we do and have independent judiciary system, we'll be able to move ahead and accelerate beyond what we're doing now.
Right, thank you. So does that mean then we just need prayers? If these forces, we cannot deal with them, you know, we need maybe to amass people to actually come and pray for this particular country.
But we've been praying for a long time, but you know, we need to do more.
We need to do more. All right, let's hear from Wirunga.
No, I think the thing is this, and I want now to add this element of legacy. When you look, if this was the first agenda of President Kenyatta, to start with security sector reforms, then he must sustain it and allow the reforms to work. This is how I want to look at it. First, Parliament must do its work. The chairman of the National Security Committee is a very powerful position in this country. And they work very closely on terms of looking at our national security architecture and how they can advise the president on what needs to be done. We know there's been serious resistance to reforms in the police service. We've always advocated that we need to move from the word reform and use the word transformation, because the national police service in this country requires a transformation. Now, if the president felt it good to start the changes, notwithstanding what we are reading in the papers, whether it was the procedure was okay or not, then to me, I think it is at the core of is looking at how national security is supposed to be evolved within the next 5 years. Dibal, all of us must work together. Now, do we have to blame the president or the executive? That normally is not my line of thought, but today I want to say this. For example, and I want to divert, this country created NTSA. What we've seen NTSA today is not what the country was expecting. The idea behind the establishment of NTSA was noble, but the people given the responsibility to perform are the problems. So even with our National Police Service, our national security architecture and the sector, if the president has decided, and I hope he has, then he must let go the police transformation process, and those given the responsibility to reform this sector should do that work, so that in the next 5 years, we know we can't change this police in 5 years, but at least you can see some changes. And one thing I've liked about Kinoti, he has talked about the police station level. As a director of DCI, as a director in charge of criminal investigations, I know he doesn't have much leverage at the police station. But I can tell you the biggest problem in this country in terms of reform is at the police station. So if even the new DIG can start reforming the police in this country at the police level, station level, OCPDs, those are managers. You'll walk to any office and you'll find a very good looking, very nice talking, very knowledgeable OCPD. But the biggest problem in this country is at the police station. So if Kinoti has noticed that, and he works very closely with his counterpart at the National Police Service and Administration Police, that is where the problem is. And let them start from there. I'm giving them free advice. Of course, they know. And then let the president and his team and the executive allow reforms to move on. That will be a good agenda for this country.
All right. All right, we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, of course, we shall look at the international news and, of course, what is happening regionally as well. We know that also Paul Kagame, who's the president of Rwanda, effectively took office as a chair of African Union. And, of course, we shall look at what does that really portend for AU and a raft of other issues as that is concerned as well.